With that, I request you all to put your attention now for a very interesting plenary. And this is the second plenary on CISO in the Techade. What would be the role of the CISO in the technology decade? For this, we have a power-packed panel of leaders with the esteemed speakers for the session. I'm going to invite on stage the moderator for this session, Mr. Ganesh AR, CISO, ICICI Bank. Joining him, we have Mr. Jackson Fernandez, VP Information Security and ICT Governance, Bangalore International Airport Limited. Mr. Saurav Chandra, Executive Director and Lead Cybersecurity India, Security Architecture, Providence, India. And Mr. Debashish Jyoti Prakash, Managing Director, Asia Qualis. May I now request you all to please join the stage, and can we have a huge round of applause for this plenary? With that, over to all of you. Looking forward to a great session.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is the last session, I believe, and towards the end of a very long day, so we will not keep you waiting very long, and unless and until you have some lot of questions thrown at us. And I have with me my co-panelists, and I thank, to start with, on behalf of the co-panelists as well as myself, really thank DSCA for giving this opportunity to us. So basically, this Techade and all of this, meaning I also heard very recently that I believe 2021 to 2030, the current decade that we are running is kind of being called the Techade, etc. So that is where the context of the topic of this discussion comes in. And obviously, the whole context around the topic is that there are a lot of things changing, and this decade is going to be probably different from whatever we have seen in the past. And in that kind of scenario, what will be the role of the CISO, and how will it kind of change, whatever it is? And obviously, there will be a lot of things about constantly changing, digital transformation, etc. But I want to kind of be a little counterintuitive here. I will step back a little bit. To start with, I will probably throw open the question of, okay, fine, a lot of things are changing, everything is changing tomorrow, everything is this one. That is the kind of refrain that we always hear. But I just want to step back a little bit and probably seek the views of the panelists in terms of, while so many things will be changing, what is it that will not change and will continue to be important in the role of the CISO, not just in this decade, but probably for a number of decades to come. And maybe we will spend just a few minutes on that before we jump into what is changing, because quite often there is a good chance of sometimes getting carried away by what is changing and not kind of necessarily focusing on what is going to stay forever. I'm just reminded of what Jeff Bezos used to have as a value in Amazon, saying that look at what the customers will always want for the next 20 years and gear up yourself for that, which is kind of a very wide range, good prices and good availability all the time. So something like that is what comes to my mind. Maybe I will just start with Saurav. In terms of what do you think in our roles that we do will stay not just in this decade, but probably in the next few decades?
I hope I'm audible to everybody. Okay, thank you. So the role of a CISO is actually a very interesting one. While we keep on talking about digital transformation, and the topic of this plenary is to actually talk about the CISO in the decade, but personally to me, there are foundational things that a CISO must keep on doing. So when I talk about foundational things, and this has been brought by quite a few of the speakers early today, I'm talking about simple things like sensitive data encryption, I'm talking about patching, I'm talking about backups, I'm talking about secure remote access, pretty much everything that you need to make things foundational. One big thing I would also kind of point out is definitely the need of end user trainings and the deployment of the necessary tools in the enterprise to manage risks in a very better way. Earlier, a gentleman actually pointed out a term called security by risk. So that is definitely something that I believe is something that we would be doing.
Yeah, thanks Saurabh for that perspective. Maybe
Hello, hi. Sorry. I'm not as tech savvy, apparently. Having said that, thank you very much, Ganesh, for the question. I think what doesn't change, I think Saurav has articulated it quite well. It's the basics, you know. At the end of the day, I mean, if you're not doing your identity and access management part of it, these things will continue no matter what the technology is. I think the patching part of it, it's going to get, it's already as bad as it can be. I mean, every alternate day we get a new patch or something of the sort. So these are things I think that will continuously stay. And it's about starting to look at those aspects which can get automated and all of that. I think that's a part that we will have to stay with to get, because we cannot keep pace with the amount of alerts or incidents that get thrown at us. So I think that's another part which we have started down, which I think we need to continue to stay the course as much as possible as we go ahead. Thank you.
DJ will come on this panel from probably a very different angle from the other three of us, because we are kind of so-called CISOs or whatever it is. DJ, I think, will add value in this panel from what he is seeing his customers, people who are buying from him, look at these kind of things. So that way we will probably have a very nice complimentary view from DJ on these aspects. So what do you think when you are trying to sell to CISOs, where whatever they have been kind of asking for and whatever, let's say, will kind of remain the same? We will come to what will change in the next round.
First of all, good evening, Ganesh here and other panelists and members in the audience. So the wheel is constantly going to be round in shape. The terrain will change, the road will change, but the wheel will remain round. My discussions when I started my career in cyber 17 years ago, 18 years ago, was reducing risk. The discussion continues to be the same. Things that perennially changed around landscape was threat vectors changed, asset classes changed, vectors changed, hackers' way of doing things changed. What did not change was the constant effort by CISO and CISO teams to ensure that their efforts are always translated into risk reduction, finally resulting in breach prevention. So, like everybody on the panel, says, be it the patching story, be it the inventory story, you will have to define new nitty-gritty of doing things when assets continue to evolve or become modern day assets. But the problem essentially will remain the same, and CISOs will be faced or will be tasked with the job of making sure that the information risk does not become a business risk. So from our conversation with large CISO organizations and their security operations team, what we see is, while they continue to talk about scale being a challenge, workforce unavailability or talent being a challenge, but what hasn't changed is the fact that businesses continue to be attacked in various forms, and it still becomes the top of the board agenda to make sure that business is resilient and CISO teams continue to be restless.
Thanks, DJ. That was a good kind of complementary angle of coming at it in terms of what you are seeing. And now probably now that we have established some kind of basics and what will not change, I think now obviously everyone will be eager to look at what is it that is changing. So I'll probably start off with Jackson in terms of what is it that is changing and what is it that he is seeing in the work that he is doing. Particularly when we talk about change, obviously the key thing that comes to everybody's mind is this whole gamut of digital transformation, particularly post-pandemic and all of that. And that within that so-called huge buzzword or all-encompassing catch-all bucket, there are a lot of other things which will happen, like movement to cloud, automation, etc. So under that whole broader gambit of digital transformation, what is it that you are seeing in your organization, and what is it that you are seeing in terms of how it is impacting the role of the CISO, and how you think it will impact, let's say, the role of the CISO in the next decade?
I think how it is changing us as CISOs is about the pace of change, I think. Because previously we had time to adapt to the innovation that is coming in. We had time to learn from it, see what are the, like Debashis said, what are the threat vectors that will materialize out of it. I think that pace is changing. We now have to be geared up for protection at a far greater pace. So let's say, for example, if we talk about blockchain. Now, one of the things is, and I've heard in other forums also, everybody wants to do blockchain. Why? FOMO. Otherwise, I'll miss out. Everybody is doing it. Why am I not doing it? So let's do it. Do we understand the use cases in my organization? And two, do I understand the risks of that? So that pace at which it was coming is now increasing more. So we have now, today we are talking about deep fakes and everything. How long before it becomes a problem for us? The previous innovations, that becoming a problem took maybe 5 years, 10 years. Now we are left with maybe a couple of years before that innovation becomes a threat in our organizations. So I think that pace of change is huge. And of course, I mean, humorously and ironically, I have, when asked as a CISO, is ransomware your biggest threat? Is phishing your biggest threat? Is credential harvesting your I said digital transformation is my biggest threat. Because unfortunately what happens is that this digital transformation without swim lanes happens quite often in organizations, which then causes us to, change, focus, steer, and try to adapt to that change that happens. So I think that's changing a lot and at a far greater pace, Ganesh.
Saurabh, you were in a place where probably, as we were discussing in the afternoon, kind of literally two extremes coexist. One being the front-ending of the customer, or front ends to the customer wanting to digitally transform and then really present a different kind of an experience, and even the experience to the doctors, etc. Whereas on the other side, your so-called medical devices or biomedical devices, scanners, etc., are probably, meaning literally a millennium behind. So in this kind of a context, what do you see as your challenge in terms of when somebody is coming up with this whole buzzwords of digital transformation, etc., and how does that play out in your role, and what do you see as kind of learnings for other people as well?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ganesh. So I can give you a little biased view from the healthcare industry. I think it will be a little apt in the topic that we are talking about. If you ask me what are the two things that keeps me awake at night, the first I say is digital transformation, and the second I say is legacy devices. And I'm pretty sure we have been hearing the same terms, since the morning itself. As a CISO, digital transformation, I wouldn't say it's a nightmare, it's a reality. We have to live the reality. On one hand, when the digital innovation groups, digital transformation groups are running ahead with their initiatives of bringing in new solutions, latest and the greatest solutions in the market, the concept of security is actually left behind to a large extent. Now that's exactly where cybersecurity has to step in and manage the pace of transformation. So that's on the digital transformation piece. The other thing is legacy devices. There are many environments. You can talk about manufacturing, you can talk about healthcare. A big thing is the legacy devices, where you can't basically kind of keep on hauling the legacy devices and bring them up to, you can say, the latest and the greatest, even if you want them to be. There are many sides of the story to it, but then the end of the day, the result is, you still have to keep on using these devices and have to tackle, the issues, the risks, the vulnerabilities, and so on and so forth in a very different way, so that you basically can operate and balance on one hand with the legacy devices, managing the legacy devices and putting a separate plan for them, and on the other hand, managing the digital transformation, the people who want the latest and the greatest and probably the next thing on the planet.
Sorry for that. DJ, what is it that you see in your customer interactions? I am sure that in a lot of interactions, in terms of to close or to kind of take your leads through, you may not be interacting only with the CISOs, but also with business leaders and even people like CFOs. And obviously, you must be hearing two sides of the story, right? One side which is talking about digital transformation, etc. How do we move ahead, etc., etc. And on the other side, you must be working with the CISOs also to kind of how to stay on top of all of this. So what is it that you see there? Because you probably are in a view where you are probably interacting with both these sets of people.
So true, Ganesh sir. So what happens is, for us, as an end user, or let's say even as a vendor, talking to many customers, their challenges become our challenges, right, to solve. So digital transformation is both a boon and a bane, right? Look at the fact that how many of us knew when hypervisors were being adopted, who knew that someday there will be containers? It's such a great thing from an innovation standpoint, but such a painful thing to protect. Who knew that one day you will have serverless? Painful thing to protect, but a great thing for software architecture. Who knew blockchain? Such a great thing from an innovation standpoint, such a painful thing to create audit, and regulatory around it. Who knew about, all these, to be honest, 15 years ago, Alexa, these things didn't even exist. Today they exist. So what is happening here is, every time there is digital transformation, we do have to make sure that the transformation that will enable our businesses to do better than our competition are also things that are vetted right at the beginning by design, with the security teams being involved. So see, it is no lie if I say innovation beats regulation any day, right? Regulation takes time to catch up. Regulation only comes in when it becomes a large scale project, right? Or it begins to impact the lives of the common man, then government gets involved, and then it has to be regulated. So until then, teams that continue to do innovation, they cannot stop. Either they work with their security teams to make sure that in the future it doesn't have to be built from scratch because regulation bothered us in such a way that we have to start from ground up. They probably need to start with security teams, with CIO organizations, with CISO organizations, right? As a vendor, what I see is today when our communication happens with CISOs, they never ask about problems that we can solve for them today. 90% of our conversation is, this is our organization in the next 5 years. Am I achieving a tool set that keeps me future proof, or am I just buying for now? So this is what we are hearing. I think this, probably something that you can connect because we meet people like you that resonate to this.
No, this is in a way very good news that this is how people are thinking. And there is only one small reaction that I will have to what you are talking about, innovation and regulation. The unfortunate reality is that while regulation may catch up behind innovation, but the risks coming out of those innovation are immediate. Because at the end of the day, as an organization, you should be more bothered about the risks that affect you and not necessarily only about regulation. Because if you are doing for regulation, you are only doing enough or bare minimum enough. But whereas you have to be focused on the risks that your organization is facing, and unfortunately, the moment that innovation is in play and it is kind of live or it is already put out, then the risk is playing out then and there. So that way, in some ways, it is like the innovation, the risk, and then the regulation. So in that kind of this one, as a CISO or as somebody who is playing the role of the protector, I think we should be more focused on the risk that goes with it as opposed to the regulation, because the regulation may or may not catch up immediately. So that is my limited point to what you were talking about, innovation and regulation. But moving forward, what this brings to the fore is that obviously we touched upon the role being in terms of protection, etc., etc. But increasingly, what we are also seeing is that how does the role of a CISO move beyond just security? Because today, the risks that come out of this area, particularly in areas like healthcare and financial services, we have already seen enough examples around us, definitely needs this area or this particular role to be kind of elevating itself to beyond just that so-called technical or technology protection role. So how do you see that panning out, and how do you see that in terms of your own experience in your careers, and also probably in what you think as a community this role or this set of people should be actually changing or looking at things differently? Maybe we'll start with Saurabh.
Sure. The first thing that I would like to say, the way the role actually evolves is for the CISOs to bring out security in business by design and default. We have been talking about integrating security into business processes. We have been talking about integrating security into various levels of business. What I'm talking about specifically is integrating security into the transformation strategy, integrating security into the various kind of processes that we have in the transformation journey. I'm also talking about giving the CISOs, the right level of authority, the right level of KPIs for them to be successful. That is the number one point. The second point that I also wanted to make is the CISOs should start acting as more like a PR function, a public relations function. So what I'm talking about is that the CISOs kind of become the chief security marketing officer, enabling strong collaboration, coalition with the other functions, ensuring that the other functions are receiving what they are supposed to receive, what we have promised to them, and ensuring that the successes as also the challenges are actually brought out in the open. When I talk about in the open, I'm talking about bringing it open to the board, bringing it open to the internal teams, bringing it open especially to the engineering teams, if you have engineering function, and basically bringing it open to everyone. That's my second point. The third one that I wanted to touch upon is security performance in business. Now we talk about security KPIs, we talk about the return on investment on security, correct? And we also had a speaker in the morning today who spoke about security itself is a return on investment, right? So that was the point that was made. So what I'm trying to put forward in this is, as CISOs, we have to enable KPIs that are business focused. When I say business focused, I'm talking about KPIs something like speed to market, I'm talking about time, I'm talking about cost, I'm talking about customer satisfaction, and so on and so forth. So if we kind of, do, say for example, some of these things, we should be able to kind of, have a better journey enabling this transformation as a CISO. I'll leave it to the other speakers to hear.
Good, good. Thanks, Saurabh. So some of the good aspects you touched upon, that brings me to another area which is becoming increasingly important. There are times that we have seen, or we as a community probably has also been accused of I'm being a little provocative or a little more frank here, that being very poor communicators on kind of bringing the risks and bringing the response to particularly the levels of, let's say, board and regulators, where there are times when you can probably see that the conversation is almost as if two people from Mars and Venus are speaking, meaning that the board member is asking something, the CISO is saying something, and it's probably, there is no connect at all. So this is one area which probably is something that is becoming more and more important as we move into this decade, not necessarily only the technology challenges. On this front, Jackson, what do you think, honestly, what do you think the community should do? Where do you think we are in that kind of a role? And where is it that you think, what has been your experience, and what is it that you think people should work on? Because to my mind, this is probably an area where there is that little bit of a kink in the armor across different sets of people in this community. So how do you think, and how important it is in the next decade or so?
I don't necessarily think that every decade is different per se. I think it's just different challenges. And we'd like to say that, we are doing a lot more. We are saving the world. It's a job at the end of the day. Having said that, I like what Saurabh mentioned about Chief Security Marketing Officer. I think from a CISO perspective, we have a lot of acronyms to play around with. So marketing wouldn't be an issue, sort of. So I think we have a lot of things, and now whatever we say zero trust, we say AML and everything, we have enough. I think one of the critical enablers, I mean, for business, I mean, what are we in the business of? Cybersecurity? What are we actually selling? Trust. When it comes to a B2C component, we want our consumers to trust that the products they are using, that the services they are using is trustworthy. If we come to know that whether it is an app, whether it is a website, if anything is not secure enough, because of which they could be at loss, is what the business loses. And as internal customers, what are we selling to, let's say whether it's marketing, finance, anybody else, what are we selling? Not necessarily trust always, but usability. Can I do this? If I have to add 2 more hurdles to the entire process that a finance guy or a marketing guy goes through, I think we may have missed the boat a bit. It is sometimes inevitable. I'm not saying that 100% of the time Ganesh will be able to solve that problem, because coming from an aviation sector, I can give this as an example. Today, the cost of all of us traveling is what? You go through physical check. Can I remove that today? Will you be trustworthy getting onto that plane if I remove the physical security check entirely? You will start getting doubts on it. But can I bring in something instead of somebody very intimately patting you down to doing something which allows you to go seamless? And that's, I think, what CISOs will have to play that role, whether it is a B2C, B2B environment, internal or external. So I think trust is the commodity that we are trading in, and I think that is what we have to sell, assurance. That's my 2 cents on it.
No, that's a good point. I think the analogy that you gave of how somebody getting whisked through is very important, both for the operator as well as in the minds of the person who is experiencing that. It's almost like if tomorrow, if we allow banking without passwords, will people be comfortable? So
absolutely.
So that's a very good analogy. And DJ, what is it that you see when you are interacting with CISOs and in this journey of, let's say, engaging with the larger community, engaging with particularly the board level members? And today, this becomes a problem, or this becomes an area to focus on for 2 reasons. One, because of the increased importance that this area is receiving, and I would say, and number 2, it's almost like our WhatsApp problem with our doctors. They are also becoming much more aware, much more this one, however much it may be what you call half aware or half intelligent about these areas. Obviously, they also pick up the papers and then see a lot of things happening. So that way, the awareness levels are also kind of improving. In that kind of a combination, what is it that you see in terms of your interaction with CISOs and how the community is actually shaping up?
Correct. To add on to what Saurabh talked about, Chief Security Marketing Officer, wonderful idea. The fact that news only shows bad news more and good news less, right? The 99.9% times the security team did a good job is never marketed well, right? So hats off to that plan. Second, coming to Jackson's idea about, security should be made simple. Really, it should be made simple. In our communication with CISOs, what we hear is, CISOs perennially are thinking that everyone who is offering a solution is forcing me to believe that security is a hard problem to solve. You can't do it yourself. So involve me, involve this guy, involve that. You're not. So they're still selling probably more scare. I think security is simple. Security can be made simple. Basics are still the biggest part of our cyber hygiene. Every time there's a breach, we see that it involved an asset that was the least visible asset to the enterprise, right? I was, very recently we had a customer advisory board meeting in Mumbai a month ago. We had a CISO from an Australian insurance company attend to it. He was a new hire. He said, only after joining them I found out that they don't even have a vulnerability management product. And when we did an effort, we found out there are millions of vulnerabilities. So I thought to myself, am I the chief security officer or the chief scapegoat officer? Because it is just too much to do, but it will result in a breach even before I can begin to deploy a plan to execute here, right? So I think in our communication with CISOs, what you're hearing is, let's not make cybersecurity seem and look complex. Let's make it simple. It's like brushing your teeth. Simple thing, but you must do it every day. You miss, there's a problem. So let's make security simple. Every CISO tells us this. Let's make it simpler, more scalable, more simpler. Let more people outside of just the CISO and his team participate. It is not a problem only for one individual, right? So I think I agree with Saurabh's idea of doing security marketing officer, Jackson's idea about making it simpler. This is exactly what we hear from our customers.
No, fantastic. Excellent thoughts from all around and from different perspectives. And I think as we see the thing has already turned red, so we are beyond time. So with this, I think we'll kind of, obviously this debate can go on forever. But the points that emerge are very clear. There are a few things which will remain forever in terms of discipline, hygiene. Those can never be given away in spite of whatever technology landscape and digital transformations, etc. that happen. But at the same time, the role will also have to evolve much, much faster because the new innovations are happening faster. And the way in which the security teams will have to both react and proactively adapt to what is happening and kind of put that business context onto it and make it kind of sensible for both the business as well as the end customers that we serve. I think that is probably the most important takeaway as far as at least I would look at it. And on this note, do we take audience questions? Or we don't have time? Okay, fine. On this note, we will wind up, and I would like to thank my co-panelists. Thank you for being such wonderful participants. And once again, thank DSA for this opportunity. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, panel. The constants that won't change, keeping pace with incidents, digital transformation, and the related realities connected to it, FOMO and legacy devices, security return of investment, connecting the dots, exploring the known and the unknown, and of course, seamless trust and the simplicity of the entire narrative. Thank you so much to all of you for having been here and having shared that conversation with us. Thank you.